Welcome to the hexdevs podcast, where we interview the best developers across the globe so we can help you become a better developer. I'm Thiago.
And I'm Stephanie. Hey everyone! We are so excited to be back to the hexdevs podcast. And this year we will try something different with the episodes. We will have a more general episode where we ask more technical questions to our guests. And then we have another episode asking more about the immigration part. So this first episode, we have Fabiano Bezelga. Thanks for joining us today, Fabiano.
Thanks. Thanks for the invite, Stephanie. It's a pleasure to be here.
We're happy to have you here. And so for this first part, we will talk more about general questions, more technical questions as well. And the first question is, can you tell us a little bit about yourself? What are your interests, your background?
Sure. So, my name is Fabiano Bezelga. My interests are mostly related to software development, I would say, startups, and also I enjoy playing some card games. And I think that summarizes a little bit of me.
What card games do you play?
Okay, so I started playing Magic the Gathering, and recently I play like Hearthstone or Gwent, and I like it a lot.
So, Fabiano, you've been the co-founder of a very large fintech in Brazil, and you were also a CTO. What kind of challenges you had to face for being a co-founder, a technical co-founder?
I stayed in this company I co-founded, and I stayed for 7 years. So the challenges changed among the years. I would say in the beginning, the challenge was more to find the product market fit. So as all startups in the beginning, the main challenge is to survive. And then we needed to pivot the product once, and so I'd say it was more on the business side in the beginning. And next up, the technical challenge, of course, to learn everything related to investments, accounting, and that kind of things, integrations with partners. So actually I had no previous experience in the investments domain, so this was a little bit challenge as well. And compared to other places that I worked, I can say that I had the privilege to have like a CEO, co-founder that also understands how to code. So this made it much easier to talk about technical things. And in other companies, I struggled a little bit to give the reasons why we need to do some stuff. And the CEO helped a lot on this regard. And more late stages, the challenges became more about scaling the team, structuring the teams, and everything aligned with the business timing, and also how to define the culture and kind of shape the culture, I would say, in the way that makes sense for the company to succeed. These are the things that come to my mind.
So you mentioned that you had to find product market fit and kind of understand the market a little bit and see if the idea you guys were working on would make sense. So how did you do that, and when did you figure out that you had a market for your idea?
Luciano, that is the CEO, co-founder, was actually like his idea. He has like the expertise on this investments field, and we tried one product first, and I think was after like a year and a half. I don't remember exactly, but we find out that our users needed something a little bit different. So it was actually getting feedback from the users. We were able to pivot the product to a more successful way, I would say.
Coming back a little bit about creating the culture that you said, what was that something that was always in your mind since the beginning, or was that something that after, let's say, a few months you started thinking about it?
Yeah, that's a good point. If I could go back in time, I would think about it from the beginning because I think it helps a lot. But actually, it took a few years to think about this like deeply enough, but the culture was there anyway, right? Because just need to officialize and make it more clear to the whole team. And after we did this, made it much easier so we could give feedback more clearly to everyone. But yeah, it took I think 3 or 4 years until we write it down and talk to everyone about it. So it was like something I could have done before if I could go back in time.
Just a little disclaimer, I actually had the chance to work with Fabiano for a few months before moving to Canada. So if it helps, I can say that the culture was like really, really good. And I wish all startups would be like Magnetis. So I think that you did a really great job.
Oh, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
So talking more a little bit about starting a new team. So you had to create a whole engineering team from scratch. So how was the process for you? What were the main challenges? And I don't know, maybe something that you're really proud of?
Mm-hmm. All right. So it was like my first time building a team like this. Previously, I had like experience in managing uh, a smaller group of people, but never like I built the team. So this was the first time. And how was the process? There was a book that helped me a lot on the hiring and team building. It's called Smart and Get Things Done by Joe Spolsky, I think. And this guy is the creator of Trello. So yeah, he goes through the process of how do you make good hiring. So basically, smart, of course, means person can adapt to different situations and that kind of things, and has the knowledge between that regards what's needed for the job. And the get things done is about getting things done, of course. But he says that some people might have one and not the other. For example, he says that people from the universities, like teachers in university, have a lot of knowledge, but they are not used to ship things, to work with a team of developers, for instance. So only knowledge is not enough, and he says that there are other type of professionals that can get things done, but don't have like the all the knowledge behind needed, or they're not willing to learn, so this can slow down the team. So he brings attention to these 2 points, and also talk about team building and how to make the interview process. I didn't follow everything on this book, but it was like a very good starting point to start to think about this subject. What else? Also, diversity, of course. I think it's a major factor while building teams. So yeah, making like team. I think it makes the team better to have different point of views, and you end up with better output for the users. What else? The culture I just mentioned, I think it's key for making it work. And also, I encouraged, I think, a lot of people in the team to give talks, write posts, blog posts, and making open source stuff. So I would say this is one thing that I'm proud, as you asked.
Yeah, that is true. I think I actually met you at the Rails Girls workshop, right, in São Paulo.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. We are the company was sponsoring the meetup, and then I met Stephanie, and then we hired her, but then she escaped to Canada.
Yeah, that was the sad thing that I had to give up. Right. Do you know if the book was inspired on David Allen's book, Getting Things Done?
I'm not sure. I don't think so. It's yeah, the title is a little bit similar, but yeah, very similar actually. But no, I don't think so.
Yeah, Joel has a very famous blog too. It's called Joel on Software. And so for your, I guess for your first few hires, I guess like the culture is something more like, oh, so I as the CTO, I enjoy these things. Like I like Ruby. I think testing is important. So you probably try to find someone that has the same interests maybe and kind of the same experience. So how did you approach your first hires, and how was the culture like at the start? Because I guess like you just do the things you kind of enjoy and that you believe in, and then you try to find people that share the same values as you, because probably it's just you and your co-founder. So how was that like at the beginning?
Yeah. Interesting. Yes, I think you summarized it pretty well. So actually, Luciano was looking for someone that had knowledge in Ruby, so he already knew like this community in the way, in the mindset behind everything like agile and testing, delivery speed, that are the things that Rails talks about, right? So yeah, the first hires were people that matched this mindset. Yeah, I think you summarized it pretty well.
Did you work with Ruby already?
You mean before Magnetis?
Yeah.
Yes. Actually, I did my university. What is the name of the thing that you do in the end? The final project. Yeah, I don't know the name in English, but I think you know what I'm talking about. I was doing using another technology. I was writing about the Adobe Flex. It was something related to Flash, but it was a framework on top of Flash. I think it's called Flex. It was like a framework to build Flash apps. But it was me and another colleague, but was actually a little bit boring because we only found the official documentation, and we could not find so many resources about it. And I remember one day at university, I was having like a Java class and need to start a new project. And I think I was using what is the name? NetBeans is like a IDE for Java. And while creating a new project, there were like so many options, and one of them was Ruby and Ruby on Rails. And I found the icon like beautiful, and I start to research about it, Ruby and Rails, and uh, was kind of a long time ago. I think 2007. I don't know. I don't remember. But then I started to research a lot about it, and I got very engaged about the subject and the mindset behind Ruby and Rails, like developer friendly, deliver projects as fast as possible with quality. And then I changed the topic of the project, of the final project of the university, to be about Rails. And after that I worked in like 2 or 3 companies using Ruby and followed the community kind of since the beginning in Brazil, not the very beginning, but I was like in all the RubyConf Brazil, and yeah.
It's really interesting that your co-founder, the CEO, asked for the technology to be Ruby. And do you think it would be things would be really different if you didn't have a co-founder that had some technical knowledge and that understood some stuff that you recommended? So, yeah, do you think it would have been really different or harder if he didn't have this approach?
Yeah, I think actually it's quite a privilege to have this, because I don't think actually the other CEOs I worked with didn't have so much knowledge about it, so made things go faster for sure. And also I really appreciated all his input on some stuff. It's not like his expertise, but he had like a good mindset on coding as well. So in the beginning, he was actually a little bit closer to the coding itself, but at some point I said to him to focus on business, and it was close to the time that we needed to pivot. So yeah, I think it made it much easier. So I didn't need to explain a lot of things in details or argue so much, because he understood very fast what I was talking about.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I'm curious right now. Was Magnetis one of the first robo advisor platforms in Brazil at the time?
Yes, actually, I would say I was the first one.
Nice.
Yeah, we were also users of Magnetis, and if we compare it to the robot advisors here, the user experience is so much better.
Yeah, it's really bad. I'm like, oh, I miss Magnetis.
Yeah. What are can you tell the name of the products you have there? Because I have the same problem here in Germany.
So we use Wealth Bar. They're actually a Vancouver company, I guess. Yeah, they are Vancouver based. And to us, it was a shock when we created the account, and I was like, oh, but and it didn't seem really user friendly. And to add to that, we were also not 100% knowledgeable in Canadian investments. So I think that may have played a part as well.
Yeah, there's also Wealth Simple, but we never used it.
Yeah, there is Simple. Yeah, maybe some others. But I also think it's something that is becoming more popular. It's like I ask people around, and they don't know they don't know anything about those things. But I do know that Wealth Bar CTO is someone that is really engaged in the community as well. Like I heard a developer here in Vancouver saying good stuff about the culture as well. So I think that in that sense is similar to Magnetis.
Yeah, nice. That's cool.
Yeah.
And also, Magnetis was a full remote company, at least for the developer team. You guys were working remotely. Uh, was was that from the beginning? Did you guys started working remotely from the start or not?
Um, so actually, no, in the beginning we had this, how can I say, hybrid mode, because we had like a possibility to go to the office if you want or work remotely. That was very normal as well. But in the early beginnings, like me and Luciano, we didn't have an office. So the company started remotely, I would say. And this helped to create all the workflow to be remote friendly. And while creating the engineering team, while hiring the engineering team, at some point we hired two developers from the northeast of Brazil. After being part of a conference there, Tropical Ruby, and we met some developers, and we wanted to have this developers with us, and then we acted more proactively because they were like full remotes, not they're going to the office, right? And there were some challenges on that, but I think we succeeded in this field. But it was not like all the team remote, all the engineering team remote. It was like half. When I left, we had like about 30 developers in the team. So yeah, it was like that.
To me, one of the most valuable thing that you get from hiring remotely is getting talent across the country, across the world, right? But then I guess that you also have some disadvantages, like, or not. I don't know. What is your input in that?
Yeah, for sure. I think the main advantage is that, for sure, and also brings more diversity to the team, like geographically, nationality, diversity. And I would say, yeah, the advantages. I think the thing that I felt most is when we were about to celebrate some achievement, like achieving a goal or something like that, and then the team is not there together. This was like the worst part for me, at least, because yeah, this team feeling, everybody together there to celebrate these moments, I think would be very important. We try to work around it, like sending pizza to all the remote developers at the same time, this kind of things, but it's not the same thing, right? Yeah, I would say that's the worst. There are things like communication, but I don't see that as a bad thing because it shapes the workflow and the culture for better, I would say. Because if you're remote, you need to have good communication, you need to have good documentation, you need to have good processes. So I think this enforces companies to have better processes. That's my opinion.
Yeah, that's true. And if you have everyone in the office, that doesn't mean you also have a good communication, right? So
Exactly.
Yeah, so that's really interesting. So you said that by being a remote company, this environment kind of forced you to do the right thing, right? So you have to write documentation, you need to be good at communication, you need to be good at writing stuff, so you need to be a good writer, and that also helps with writing code, I guess. And so that's interesting. So if you're a remote company, you are forced to do the things properly, right? So that's an interesting advantage. And how did you manage to create this remote atmosphere? Like, what are the things that are really important if you're trying to start a remote culture development? If you want to start a remote development environment, what are the main things that you should worry about?
Actually, this is one of the most asked questions because we had some success creating this remote team, and when other CTOs or managers from other companies knew about that, they want to talk with me on how to make it work. So
I guess you can be a remote CTO coach then.
yeah. Yeah.
You should add that to your resume.
Okay. But I think there is like a misunderstanding on most companies while talking to these companies and people. The questions were like, how do I know if the employee is working? Which software do I install to take print screens of the computer? So I think this is the wrong way of doing it. And yeah, I gotta say, yeah, that's not the way you want to do this. So I think it comes back to the having a good hiring process, a great hiring process, to really hire people you trust and measure the outcome of the things. If something is not is going wrong, it will appear some way. And it's not the fact of being remote that would hide something, because I think problems would exist anyway in a local environment. So yeah, the first thing is understanding that you need to trust and you need to create a friendly environment for being remote and leverage on the good things about that. So you can have good talent from all over the world and flexibility and that kind of things. What else can I say? Yeah, as I said, kind of enforces good practices. For instance, in the team we had like a lot of pair programming to share knowledge and onboard new developers. So I would say this was one of the key things to make it work. Also, because if you're working remotely and there is nobody to talk to, you can feel a little bit lonely. So having this pair programming during the day can help you to.
You can also get to know your teammates better, right? And you have someone to talk to during the day. Yeah. So we will go back to pair programming in a bit because I have a lot of questions for pair programming. But before moving on, does that work only if you want to build a full team, a full remote team? Or, for example, let's say that you have just one or two people that are working remotely and then everyone else works in an office. The reason that I'm asking is because we have, like at the moment, we have one full-time remote person that is like in a time zone really different than ours. And we also have another person that lives in a nearby city, But sometimes I wonder how is the experience for them, right? So what are your thoughts on having just a few people remote, and do all the things that you said apply to that situation?
Yeah, this was one of my main concerns in the beginning after like having full remote developers inside the team, because the main concern was having like only one developer that's working remotely and all the team local. Yeah, I think this is hard when you get to a situation that, I don't know, you need to change local stuff only to a remote person, so a remote person can be part of the team. It feels a little bit artificial and gets a lot of work to get it done right. So what we did when we hired, we tried to hire like 2 developers as soon as possible, so to not only be just one. And also, I recommended to the local team, since we had like this hybrid way of working, meaning that they could work from home as well. I recommend them to do more remote work in the beginning, and if they were in the office, to act like they were working remotely. So yeah, I think it's harder when you have like this hybrid situation and the people that need to work locally don't have the option to work remotely as well. I don't know.
Yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense, because if you had someone full-time remote on your team, and let's say you also have some remote days, let's say, you would know how does it feel, and then you will know, hey, so we need to get better at this and this and this, so that our remote process goes smoothly. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. The way you said was much better, and yeah, I think it brings more empathy to you. Yeah, and didn't think about that way. True.
So one thing that I hear a lot from CEOs or CTOs or some people that don't like the idea of remote work, especially VC-funded startups, is that they say, hey, if I have a remote team, I'm not gonna be able to move fast enough because usually you have about 18 months to 2 years to deliver between rounds. And they say, yeah, so if I have a remote team, I'm not gonna be able to move fast enough because they're not gonna be here. I'm not gonna be able to communicate with them uh, in a fast manner, I guess. I wouldn't be able to maybe micromanage them all day or something like that. So what do you think about that? Like, do you think because Magnetis it became really large really quickly. So do you think that it makes sense, or do you think that it doesn't really apply? What is your opinion on that?
Yeah. Okay. Okay. I think I have a strong opinion on that. So, um, try to explain. There are some cases, since we had this hybrid mode, there are some cases that developers, when they said, oh, tomorrow I will work from home because I need to focus on this, I need to deliver this fast. So I think this summarizes a little bit, because sometimes you really need to have focus and speed and have your environment. And I think the offices, like with all these interruptions, are not friendly, sometimes not friendly for developers. And I really don't agree on the speed thing, because I think if you do it well, you can leverage speed actually. But I think it depends if the managers like agree or trust in uh, this kind of environment. Otherwise, I think would fail anyway. So Yeah, these are my opinions on that.
Mm-hmm. And you said that a few others CTOs went asking you for tips and advice on building remote teams. Do you know if any one of them were able to do that, or if at least they tried?
Yes. I didn't follow up with all of them, but there is one that we still talk. I went to Brazil recently and we met, talk a little bit about it, and he has been like a overall successful remote team, and it is kind of a hybrid environment as well, so kind of similar to Magnetis. So yeah, I would say it's possible.
Do you know the name of the company?
Yes, it's called Peer, and it's related to mobile insurance, and it is based in São Paulo.
Cool. Yeah, it's good. It's good to know more about those companies growing up and doing this kind of work.
Yeah, what you've said about interruptions in the office, I feel that every day, so I really agree with that. Like, sometimes I need to get stuff done, I need to focus, and the best way to do that is just to work from home or work from a coffee shop, because then no one can really interrupt me unless I have notifications on Slack or something. But yeah, so it's if you really want to focus for a long time, because if you're a developer, you need that. You need to focus for long periods of time. And I think it really helps to work remotely. Like you can really focus when if you have the discipline, you can really focus for a long time, and then you can do your best work, and then it's gonna be faster, right? Because you're doing things properly. So yeah, I agree with that.
Yes, exactly. The only thing, if you only work remotely, you can get like very not having, how can I say, social interactions that I think it's very important as well. So that's why I really like this hybrid mode that people can come to the office. And for people that are working like fully remote, we had some efforts to bring the team twice a year so you can like know people in person. So yeah, I think some balancing in there, it's also needed.
Going back to the pair programming practice, like as you said, it was a common practice in Magnetis. And why was pair programming so important to you? And was that something that you had done before, or was that also something that you were doing it for the first time as a CTO?
Okay, actually, let me think. Before, I think I didn't had like a place that I did a lot of pair programming, only like some sessions from time to time when was needed. It was not like a part of the culture or anything. So yeah, why it's important to me? So in the beginning, we had like a few developers and we had like a few things to solve, and we felt that if we're startup, we need to survive, and if we do one thing at a time and do it well, we thought would have more chances to succeed. Instead of like that developer does that and I do that and let's try to do these two things, we prefer to work together and stuff to deliver. So this was in the early beginning, this always having this mindset to deliver value as soon as possible, and I think pair programming had a major role in that regard. While growing the team was like regarding sharing knowledge, and this factor about welcoming and being friendly, sharing knowledge with all the team. So also there is this quality factor that I would say as well, because I think in the end you deliver better code, better product. Usually you have like this pilot, the person that is piloting, right, doing the code, and there is the co-pilot. And the way I used to do that is to switch who is in pilot and co-pilot mode from time to time, like from 30 minutes. And the person that is piloting usually is thinking more about the implementation itself, on the details and that kind of things. And the co-pilot usually use the hat that's thinking about the bigger picture of the problem that's being solved, how to solve these problems, having a bigger picture of the problem that's being solved, and thinking about architecture and the system. So I really like this, how can I say, this switching between chairs, I would say. And yeah, I really believe you can have better output using this kind of practice inside your team.
That said, let's say that, for example, because in that context, you have two people that are in the same level, let's say. So they can both kind of help each other. But let's say that I'm more in a, well, let's say not, I am. I am more in a junior position where I don't have yet the knowledge or the skills to focus more on architecture or or more on design. So in that case, how can you be an effective junior developer doing pair programming? And also the opposite, if you are in a more senior position and you are doing pair programming with junior, how do you handle that knowledge difference? And how does pair programming help with that?
All right, that's a very good question, and I really like this subject. So, yeah, so when you have this kind of situation, I still think it's very helpful, because from the junior perspective, the person can have contact with, how can I say, best practices and that kind of things. So I think it leverages a lot. Can be a little bit overwhelming, of course, but I think it leverages and speeds up the learning process. And also from the senior point of view, the person can, if the person understands that this beginner's mindset, I don't know if you heard about it, but I think I don't know if there is a book or not, but this beginner's mindset, when someone never, it's a new thing, it's a new topic, so you have like openness and eagerness to learn about it, and you can have different ways of solving the problem. So this lack of preconception helps. So if you make the team engage and believe in this culture, in this way of doing things, from the team perspective, doing pair programming, I think speeds the things up and helps also the developers that are being part of it.
Yeah, and from a communication perspective, it also goes back to the point where we were discussing communication, right? You may be the most senior person, you must have done it all, but if you can't do a pair programming session with someone that is either a junior or an intermediate, that for me, it's a big flaw. Because at least for me, the definition of senior is someone that in a way or another helps other developers grow, and not, oh, I have more than 5 or 8 years of experience.
Yeah, totally agree with that. And communication, I think it's a key factor. And I think it's a bit, it's very selfish to behave like that. So if you need to think about the team and leveraging people, and actually also helps the senior person to get better in communication, because when you know so much some stuff, you are probably very good to explain as well in a very good way. So yeah, I think it's good for all the parts, from the company, for the junior, for the senior as well.
And how do you start that pair programming culture? Do you lead by example? Do you tell them, "Hey team, you have to start pair programming"? How do you do that?
How do you approach that? Because one of my main concerns of trying to implement a pair programming culture is having people that do not want to do it being forced to do it.
Yeah, I think it comes back to the hiring. You hire for cultural fit, and if you have this pair programming culture, that will be a major factor. I remember while hiring for Magnetis, we had some questions regarding this, because there are some developers that prefer to work individually. That's fine, but it depends if it matches the culture of the company, right? So I think there are different contexts, and yeah, you cannot force people and would not be productive, I'd say. So yeah, cultural fit is the answer in my point of view.
Usually when I mention pair programming, I always hear someone say, oh, here at the company, we don't have 2 people working at the same time. We don't have 2 people doing the same thing.
We don't have the time to do that.
Yeah. So I'm sure you have heard both these nonsense stuff. So how do you answer that? Because to me, it clearly shows that the person does not know what pair programming is. But I'm like, I don't think we are the same page. But that's not what pair programming is. But I wish I had a more, I don't know, a better answer to that. How do you usually answer to those questions?
Yeah. I think there are some studies on this field that kind of proves that you can have the same speed or better speed while delivering software. I know a developer at Magnetis had some studies on that and talked about it in meetups, so I can refer to that in the podcast notes. And also, okay, so this reminds me when I was struggling to I'll make an analogy here to try to explain. So this reminds me when I was trying to make tests part of my development process, right? So I was hearing people saying the same thing. Oh, you don't have time to write tests. We need to deliver this. We need to deliver that. And when you make it like part of your process, is like not negotiable anymore, because you need quality, right, to do stuff. It's like someone that works in a different job, they had the process to make sure that things are working well and behavior the way they want to, so they have processes. So I would say testing is part of my process to develop. If you do the same thing with pair programming, like it's part of the culture of the company, and we really believe that makes our, in the long run, our code better, more reliable. We share more knowledge with the team. We ramp up better new developers. So yeah, with that, those arguments I would argue. But since I was in the CTO position, I could decide that, so it made it easier. And yeah, but if I had some discussion about this topic, this is the way that I would approach.
Yeah, cool. I was able to convince a group of developers in my company to do a mob programming session. So I'm pretty excited. But do you have any advice? Because I'm not like a pair programming expert or something. I just really wanted to have more a collaborative culture in the company. It's really big. Like I think we have more than 30 developers somehow, but sometimes maybe it's your fault. This I miss working with more people like during the day and not just doing my ticket, whatever. So I kind of missed that because I had that experience in Magnetis. So I would try to make it something regular. So do you have any advice for me?
Yeah, I know exactly how I feel because yeah, the company I'm working on, we don't have this culture as well of pair programming, and yeah, I think it differs from company to company what works in this context, and also trying to shape a little bit in that regard. But if people are not engaging to the subject, it's like to force something. I'm not sure if that's the way to go, right? Because you need to have people that understands and believes in those things, right? But regarding your experiment, I would say to do the sessions and ask them how it went to see if they understand the value of that and also give your opinion. I'm not sure how to approach this. I have the same issue, so you're in the same boat on that.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, I thought about asking, like, having the final 5 minutes to kind of review the session and see what went well, what didn't. Okay, I will keep a log, and if I have good stuff, I will share with you.
Yeah, so in the past I did some mob programming with the junior team because we had a separate juniors team, which I don't think is a good idea, but anyway. And they were like, "Oh, we're not learning anything. We're just like doing some boring stuff." And I said, "Hey, let's do some mob programming." And then we worked together on a problem, and they were like super excited because you learn stuff, right? It's not that you're gonna learn everything, but just the fact that you're collaborating and you try to solve a problem and you learn some testing and you learn some good practices, you get more engaged. So this could be like an exercise, mob programming or pair programming. Even if your company doesn't believe in that a lot, maybe you could do it as an exercise like once a week or something like that, just to make people happy and engaged, you know. And then if you don't need to like force people to go to the exercise, but the people that want to go and want to participate, I'm pretty sure they're gonna feel happy about it. They're gonna enjoy it. So I think it's kind of a team building exercise if you think about it, right?
Yes, for sure. This mob programming, I need to confess that I didn't heard about it, but I researched here. Is like you bring the whole team to do the same things, like a dojo, right? Is that the thing?
Yeah.
Oh, sounds exciting.
Yeah.
And do you have like how can I say, what is the, like anyone there is one person that is coding, and then you switch this. How does it work?
Yeah. So I was doing some research, and the way it works is you set the time for the driver. So you have one driver, and the driver is the only person allowed to modify the code. So they are the only ones that can touch the keyboard and the mouse. And then the other people are navigators. So they are doing this, the thinking process, right? The driver is not thinking. Oh, I mean, of course he's thinking, but he's not worried about design, about architecture. He's only typing what the navigators are saying they should type. And then you switch the drivers after every, I don't know, 5 or 10 minutes. So I'm going to try for the driver to drive for about 10 minutes, I guess, and then we switch, and so that we can have more people changing the rules, right?
Yeah, sounds very nice. How many people usually do this? Like, do you have a limit, or I don't know, you decide, like, can be a lot of people as well? No, because I was wondering if you have too many people, can be a little bit hard to communicate. And I don't know. Because when you're doing pair programming, you have this connection, right, with one person. Yeah, but I think this helps a lot for team building, right? No problem. But I was just wondering that if you have a lot of people, this kind of happened while I was doing dojo sessions, when you have this communication issue because there are too many people trying to talk and different perspectives, and but you have everyone like in the same page in kind of a small team, 4 or 5 people. I think this can work pretty well. Or you can use this for the team building, as Thiago mentioned. I think it is pretty nice. But yeah, I'm interested in trying this to see how it goes.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I actually haven't thought about that. About the limit of people. Yeah, cool.
Once I did a dojo with 30 people, and the idea is if you have too many people, only the driver and the co-pilot can discuss things. And if they get stuck, they ask for help, but not everyone shouts at them, hey, do this, do that. No, because then it doesn't work, right? So if you have a bunch of people, and it really works well for classes, like if you're trying to teach something and you do a dojo, only the pilot and the co-pilot can try to solve the problem, and then they switch, and then other person becomes the co-pilot, and etc. But then only if they get stuck, people can help them from the audience, but not everyone can just help. So you have to wait for your turn, right?
I see.
Yeah, that's very nice. You're saying this, I remember that I experienced this. There was this meetup in Brazil called Guru SP, Rube meetup, and at one of those meetups there was this dojo session. It was very nice to see because you have like a pair programming happening, right? Because you have 2 people that can talk. Only if they get stuck, they ask people. But I saw pair programming between 2 very good developers. It was Vinicius Baggio that went to San Francisco and working in very nice companies like Medium and others that I don't remember, and Nando Vieira, there is a very famous character in the Ruby community as well. So it was very nice live pair programming that you can see how these developers communicate. And yeah, this can help a lot to create a pair programming culture, thinking now.
Nice. Okay. Do you have the link to share?
I'm not sure if this was recorded, but I will check. I have the contact of the person. Maybe it's recorded. Yes, cool. I will look into it.
All right, so we have been talking about a lot of the good things of pair programming and its advantages. Do you think that there is any disadvantage in pair programming, or if there is a scenario where pair programming does not work? I mean, one of them we already discussed, which is forcing people to do it, but can you think of any other examples?
Sure. So I remember in the early stages of Magnetis, I used to do a lot of pair programming with Philip Sampaio. He's also someone known in the community. Ruby and Elixir has like a library now, open source library that is very used. So maybe someone of the people listen knows him, or a lot of people probably. So yeah, we used to do a lot of pair programming, but at some point we decided to split. And when you had like to think about how to solve the problem, when we didn't know where to start, where there was like a lot of uncertainty, and we need to talk when we did pair programming for that. But after the problem got shaped and we knew like, oh, we need to do this, and this. And since we did a lot of pair programming, we knew exactly the way each one of us was going to do it. So we decided to split. So yeah, I don't know if that's the case for other developers, but from my experience, at some point, we felt that this was better depending on the situation. Another case that I can recall, when we are doing some front end on CSS stuff, and then there was like a lot of try and error, right? So doing this in pair programming was a little bit, I don't know, two people like, two people try and not work, and I don't know. But yeah, I think depends on the context, on the problem being solved. I think pair programming excels in the situations that I mentioned, when you need to have some uncertainty and it's better two people thinking about it.
One thing that I wanted to ask you is about the mentoring and coaching culture of Magnetis, because I know that you had a really great mentoring culture. You were training juniors, you were hiring juniors, right? And I wanted to ask you about this. Like, how do you create that culture? How do you, like, more specifically, what you should be doing on a daily basis, I guess, in order to have that mentorship culture? Like, how do you make sure that you are giving your junior developers a great experience, and how do you make sure they are learning? So how do you do that?
Okay. That's a hard question. I think first of all, I will repeat a little bit myself, but yeah. I think comes back to the hiring, like hiring for the cultural fit, and having like seniors that engage in mentoring and speeding up junior developers, right? Because if you only hire seniors, I see that a lot in companies, not in Brazil, but mostly abroad. I see a lot of companies that only hire seniors. So where the junior, how do you become a senior developer in this environment? I don't understand that. Like, it seems that everyone was born a senior. So
well, you don't know, they grow up on trees.
Yeah, I think, yeah, I don't know. But I really believe in this beginner mindset that I just mentioned, and also giving like opportunity for people to grow with the team. This can be very healthy for the company and for the junior developer, the senior, and helps to improve communication. So I think you need to hire people that also believe in that. I think that's the main answer. It's not something you enforce, it's something that you communicate, of course, as a manager, but people should engage in that as well. They need to believe that that's better for the context of the company, for the output of the product. And having this diversity and seniority is also important for everything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting you mentioning that because I also felt that difference here. I when I first got here, I didn't find any, almost like zero junior developer position, and I honestly thought that I would never get a position here. I was like, oh, okay, I should have changed our landing in Canada time in 3 years, I guess, because I got here too soon. So going back to talking a little bit about the challenges of being a CTO, is there anything that you had to master to become a better CTO and to become a better leader, like along the way?
And especially when the team became very large.
Yes, sure. So yeah, I did like a lot of studying in the management field and learning from talking to other CTOs to learn how to manage and get better in this position. I can say that there are a lot of different opinions on this position, what should be done. I think it really depends on the stage of the company and the way the CTO wants to do that, right? So I would say that I need to get better in communication. I think communication is like the key factor in management as a whole, but for this position, let's say it's very important, and to learn to listen more than they talk, to really understand what people are thinking and to listen to their inputs and act on that. So this one thing that I tried to do a lot at Magnetis. So we had like retrospectives and we listened to the whole team and actually really take into consideration everyone's thoughts. And also understanding that every team member is different. I think this is one thing that managers, how can I say, underestimate, because you can learn how to manage people, you can read like a book, but then if you try to use the same way for every team member, it's not going to work. So there needs to be like a personal connection and to understand what the person thinks and behaves and what are the purposes behind. So I think that can help a lot. And I think different people expect different ways of management, right? So yeah, saying that sounds obvious, but I don't see that happening in a lot of places. So what else? Communication I mentioned it as well, but I think another thing is very important is because you can say a lot of stuff, communicate pretty well, but I think people will care about what you're saying if you care as well. So you need to believe in what you're saying and really engage. So people engage as well. It's like they resonate and understand what you're saying because you really believe as well. So yeah, I in my experience, I saw some examples of managers that were saying some stuff, but you can see that the person does not believe in that. It's just because it needs to be done, you know? So yeah, that's it.
Yeah. I think that the most obvious things are the ones that we miss most.
Yeah, so that makes a lot of sense. So when you talk about retros, for example, and you say, oh, so we really listen to people during the retro and we try to understand what they're talking about and really put yourself in their shoes, right? I think it's makes sense, like because then you can understand what they're struggling with, and then you can act and try to make things better. So how did so how did you so how did you how did it work? Like after the retro, do you create like some tickets or some stuff to work on afterwards? Like how do you make sure that you don't lose anything and that you try to fix the bad things and improve?
Yeah, so yeah, retrospective is another thing that I really like, and I think it's a key factor for a team to to have this kind of, because if you don't do retrospectives, it means that everything is fine, right? So yeah, I think there is always room for improvement, and so there are cases that people bring stuff to the table, and we we understood that maybe you're not communicating some stuff so well, so we need to improve the communication, for instance, or no, we really need to change some stuff, and every input was taken into consideration, and we had an action item for that. So even if it was a misunderstanding, means that we need to improve something in our communication. And this was written down with the whole team together. We did like retrospective remotely friendly as well, so everybody like in their computers with a shared screen. So we wrote the action items down during this session, and we follow up in the next session to see what was done to improve that specific point. And something that I really cared about is to make sure that everybody is being listened. In order to do that, let's say there is like a comment or input from someone that another person disagrees. If that happens often, the person that's bringing the input can get like shy or not confident to bring more input. So I made sure that like to avoid this kind of things happening, you know, to ask more what the person is talking about, to avoid this kind of interruptions and say people saying that they don't care. And yeah, so I think the manager no, the what's the name, the person that is running the retrospective needs to be aware of that to really make it work in a good shape.
Yeah, now putting together all the latest stuff that we were discussing, it kind of made me think that that is one of the main important things about having diverse people on your team, because then you can see that everyone has different needs and that you have to know when you can step in and say something so that no one feels uncomfortable. And if you have been working your whole career with the same type of people having the same mindset, it's really difficult for you to put yourself in another person's shoes, right? So it all comes together to me like that. That's why you need to have more diverse people from different backgrounds, and that's actually a really good thing for the team. And I honestly think that it's also good for the user at the end, because you can have like a new feature being discussed, but no one has the experience of being in the user place, and you might miss a really important thing, right? Because you don't have anyone that thinks differently in the team.
Yes, exactly. Totally agree.
How do you make sure that you're building the features that your users need, right? This is hard too.
Oh yes, that's hard. um, Yeah, this like product management and how can you make sure? Yeah, I think the process that we created is to have like some hypothesis. We're gonna build this feature, and we expect this to happen, right? But we don't know if it's going to happen or not. So yeah, we create hypotheses and bring data to try to create like bases and arguments that make sense. Then you bring it up to the team to see if they engage on that, and if the team engages, it's developed. And I think the celebration of the feature should be when the hypothesis is achieved and not when it's deployed to production, because I think that kind of ends the cycle. So I would celebrate something only when it really worked out. So yeah, you need to have like a fast way to prove a hypothesis, either if they failed or not. It's actually a good thing that hypothesis failed, because you have ways to measure it and you know that it failed, so you need to try another way of doing it or another feature. But yeah, this celebration thing, I would say, is important. What your team is celebrating tells a lot about the way the team is working. So basically, hypothesis, test fast, and see if it worked out or not.
So I think that we asked we asked a bunch of questions. Thank you so much for sharing all of that. To me, it was a really good conversation. And to wrap up, I think that I want to ask you, do you plan to become a CTO again?
All right. Yeah, that's a question I make myself from time to time, just to give context to the listeners. So I left Magnetis after 7 years, and then I want to come back to be a full-time developer. There are a lot of reasons behind it. I'm not sure if I should go through all of them now, but answering your question, yeah, since I experienced like how it is, and I think you can see that I have some engagement talking about these topics, and I cannot like only do the coding and not trying to improve other things like processes, culture, management, and that kind of thing. So this is what's happening to me right now. The idea of only being a developer. My position is senior developer, but I cannot hold myself to do other stuff. And this this was one thing that when I said I was leaving, other CTOs, like friends of mine, told me this would happen. They said, no, I'll just code and that's it. But yeah, they were right. And yeah, for now I'm trying to embrace as much as possible this new experience moving and like living abroad and having different people from different countries working with me. So this is very valuable. And of course, giving some input. I think like a lot of input on the manager side. And yeah, the CEO likes and asks for more input. So I think it's good to have this openness. And the company that I'm working now doesn't have a CTO. We try to have like this horizontal thing. So I would say that I act sometimes like CTO and sometimes as a full developer. So I really like this this thing, but sometimes I miss being. I confess that I miss having this role because I can have more influence. So yeah, answering your question, I don't know, but if I would become a CTO again, I would like to start something from scratch again because I really like this beginning of startup and to build stuff from scratch and create this engineering team. I'm not engaged so much in having like a mid-size, big-size company because the challenges are very different. And yeah, so maybe, and I would give preference for starting something. But for now, as I said, I'm enjoying a lot coding and having like this side, how can I say, role on management and process of the company, and the other developers also like that I do this. So yeah, so far that's it. But I cannot live like without coding. So yeah, I need to do that to survive.
And what about founding a new business?
Yeah, that's something that I consider in the future. Yeah, that's something that I like. I have some ideas, nothing concrete. Currently, I'm studying like new technologies, like new technologies for me, and so Rust and Flutter for mobile development, and also having some ideas on new stuff because yeah, maybe in the future.
So last question, if you had a time machine and you could go back to the time when you were starting out as the co-founder and CTO, what advice would you give you?
Yeah, the first one would be to establish, like, write down the culture from the beginning. Of course, you can change stuff along the way, but having something written down, I think it helps a lot. That would be the first one. Yeah, that's the thing that comes to my mind now. Let's say.
That's really cool.
Yeah, that's great advice.
I mean, there are probably people that never even thought about it, and they're still they're still in a management position. So, all right. So that was a really cool conversation. We could talk about a bunch of other interesting stuff for, I don't know, several hours. But thank you so much, Fabiano. I'm really happy that we talked about a bunch of interesting things, and I hope we can have you in future episodes.
All right, so yeah, thank you very much. I'm very grateful for the invite. It was very nice conversation with both of you. So yeah, it's nice to talk about these topics.
Yeah, it was a really insightful conversation. I learned a bunch of stuff. Like, I have so many questions. So you need to come back. That's it for this episode. Thank you so much for listening, and don't forget to subscribe to our podcast.